Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be exploring, well, excerpts from Friedrich Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil. Now, Nietzsche, I think we all know, is known for being kind of challenging but absolutely brilliant philosopher. So our mission today is to really extract those key insights without getting too lost in all the philosophical jargon.
You know, one of the things that makes Beyond Good and Evil so fascinating is that Nietzsche isn't just, sort of presenting these like very carefully constructed philosophical arguments. He's really actively dismantling these conventional ways of thinking. He really wants us to question like everything, even those like kind of truths that we consider, just to be self-evident. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he kicks things off with this idea of the will to truth. It seems like pretty straightforward at first, right? Like we all have this desire to uncover the truth.
Yeah.
But Nietzsche suggests it might not be so simple.
No.
He compares philosophers to a sphinx, this like, mythical creature who poses these riddles and devours those who can't answer them.
Oh, well.
And he's saying like this will to truth can be just as perplexing and perhaps even leading us down these dangerous paths if we're not careful.
I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I find that like the more I learn about something, the more I realize how much, I don't know, it could be like a little unsettling to have your assumptions challenged like that.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche's suggesting that this constant questioning, this desire to like peel back the layers of truth is a fundamental part of the human experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that questioning leads us directly into Nietzsche's critique of traditional morality, where he introduces these really kind of groundbreaking concepts of master and slave morality.
Okay. So he's essentially saying that what we often consider to be good might actually be a system that's been put in place by the weak to control the strong.
Exactly. He uses this, really kind of striking analogy of a bird of prey and a lamb.
Right.
So the bird of prey, naturally strong and powerful, acts according to its nature, right? It doesn't see its actions as evil. That's just how it is. But the lamb, on the other hand, views the bird of prey as this, cruel aggressor. And this, Nietzsche argues, is how slave morality develops. It's the perspective of those who resent the power of the strong.
It's a really, really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
Because it suggests that, that our ideas about good and evil might not be as absolute as we tend to think they are.
Right. Absolutely. And this is where Nietzsche even challenges, some of the giants of philosophy, right? He criticizes, for instance, this idea of synthetic judgments a priori, suggesting that these supposedly universal truths, right, are often just a reflection of a particular perspective.
And I think, like, when you think about how differently people from different cultures or backgrounds might view, a particular action, it's really fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
What's considered polite in one culture might be seen as rude in another. And it highlights how much our moral frameworks are shaped by the societies we live in.
Exactly. And Nietzsche's point is that we should be, critically examining these frameworks. We should be questioning whether, the values our society holds dear are actually serving everyone equally, or whether they might be benefiting certain groups at the expense of others.
Yeah, it's like he's shining a light on these like hidden power dynamics that shape our moral beliefs. And that leads us to, I think, his idea of the free spirit.
Yeah, so the free spirit for Nietzsche is someone who, dares to challenge these conventional ways of thinking. And it's interesting, he even suggests that true philosophers shouldn't limit themselves to just studying, the great thinkers. They should also turn their attention to studying the everyday person.
Right, so it's not just the elite.
Exactly.
You need to understand the full spectrum of human experience.
Precisely. And Nietzsche warns about, the dangers of sort of blindly following these modern ideas, which can, stifle individual thought, turning us into, what he calls herd animals.
Right. So the free spirit is someone who can kind of step outside of that, step outside the herd mentality and think for themselves. But that could be a pretty isolating experience, can't it?
It can. And Nietzsche argues that free spirits often have to, wear these masks to protect themselves from the misunderstandings of others. He even quotes, the French writer Stendhal, who said that, good philosophers need to have this kind of clear-eyed view of the world, much like a successful banker, who can see through all the complexities of finance. They have that kind of understanding of what's really going on.
Right. Well, and it makes sense. If you're constantly questioning things that other people take for granted, you're bound to be seen as a bit of an outsider, right?
Absolutely. And Nietzsche uses these really vivid metaphors to illustrate the challenges of being a free spirit. He talks about, moving Ganges Radogati, which is like the flowing Ganges River, versus being stuck, Kurmagati, like a slow tortoise, or even, frog-like hopping around erratically.
So the free spirit is constantly in motion, adapting, evolving, while those clinging to the conventional thinking are kind of stagnant or moving in a way that lacks purpose. It's not easy being a free spirit, but it seems like Nietzsche saw it as an essential path for those who want to truly understand themselves and the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a challenging path, but a rewarding one.
A rewarding one.
Yeah. And this kind of brings us to, I think, a really crucial aspect of Nietzsche's thought, which is this exploration of suffering and its role in human growth. This might seem kind of counterintuitive at first, but he argues that suffering can actually be a catalyst for this kind of, positive transformation.
Yeah, this is one of those ideas where you really have to stop and think for a second. We're often taught to avoid suffering at all costs, but Nietzsche's suggesting there might be something valuable to be gained from it.
Exactly. He highlights this tension, right, between our instinct to avoid pain and our capacity to reason about what is, truly meaningful. He even points out, how historically, powerful rulers were fascinated by this ascetic ideal, embodied by those who renounce worldly pleasures and embrace this life of simplicity and self-denial.
It's almost like even those who seem to have it all, right, the power, the wealth, the influence, are still drawn to this idea that there's something to be learned through hardship, through self-discipline. It challenges our assumptions about what truly brings happiness and fulfillment.
Absolutely. And Nietzsche suggests this kind of shift in how we judge actions, right? So moving beyond simply evaluating the consequences, considering the motives behind them, he argues that focusing on the origins of actions rather than just their outcomes allows us to move beyond these simplistic notions of morality and delve into the complexities of human motivation.
Right. So it's like instead of just asking, did this action have a good or bad result?
Yeah.
We're also asking, what drove this person to act in this way?
Exactly.
It adds a whole new dimension to how we understand human behavior.
Exactly. And this kind of leads us to, I think, one of Nietzsche's most provocative concepts, which is the immoralist. Now before we go any further, it's important to clarify that this isn't about, advocating for bad behavior. It's about questioning and ultimately transcending these traditional notions of good and evil.
It's easy to misunderstand what Nietzsche means here.
Yeah.
But he's not saying that we should just throw out all moral principles. It's more about recognizing that those principles might not be as absolute as we often think they are.
Right, exactly. The immoralist is someone who prioritizes self-creation and the will to power above conventional morality, They see those traditional rules as potential limitations on human potential, not necessarily as guiding principles.
Okay, so Nietzsche is even suggesting that immoralists might see suffering itself as something to be overcome, a challenge to be conquered on this path to self-realization. I mean, he uses this image of anterior and posterior souls to describe the complexity of these individuals.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating.
Suggesting they're difficult to understand using conventional categories.
Right, and it's important to remember that Nietzsche's ideas, they can be easily misinterpreted, right? They should be approached with nuance and careful consideration. He's not, presenting a straightforward recipe for how to live, but rather offering a set of tools to help us, dismantle our preconceived notions and carve our own paths.
Right. So we've explored this will to truth that can lead us down these unexpected paths, this critique of traditional morality that really kind of flips the script on good and evil, and these figures of the free spirit and the immoralist who challenge the boundaries of conventional thinking. It's clear that Nietzsche wasn't afraid to shake things up, but he doesn't stop at critique. He also had some pretty powerful thoughts about the future, particularly the future of Europe.
Yeah, Nietzsche was deeply concerned about what he saw as as the decline of European culture. He felt that the rise of mediocrity, driven by what he called slave morality, was eroding the foundations of a truly great society.
This idea of slave morality leading to mediocrity is a pretty bold claim.
Yeah.
It sounds like you have a lot to say about the state of things today.
He would. He was particularly critical of what he called the herding animal mentality, right? That he saw spreading throughout Europe. This tendency to conform and avoid standing out. And he believed that this stifled creativity and prevented individuals from achieving their full potential.
So for Nietzsche, true progress and greatness come from embracing individuality and rejecting blind conformity.
Exactly.
And this connects directly to his call for a new type of leader.
Yeah.
Who could guide Europe towards a brighter future.
Right. He believed that Europe desperately needed individuals willing to challenge conventional thinking, embrace the will to power, and lead with strength and conviction. He even envisioned a new ruling class, not based on lineage or wealth, but on qualities like strength, creativity, and this drive to excel.
He wasn't talking about power in a traditional sense, though, right? It wasn't about, like, political domination or brute force.
No, not at all. For Nietzsche, the will to power was about self-mastery, about striving to reach your full potential as an individual. It was about overcoming those internal obstacles that hold us back from achieving greatness.
So it's more about personal growth.
Yeah.
And the pursuit of excellence than about dominating others.
Exactly. Think of it as the force that drives us to create, to innovate, to push the boundaries of what's possible. Nietzsche believed this drive was essential for the flourishing of both individuals and societies.
And this brings us back to those free spirits and the immoralists that we were talking about earlier. They represent the kind of individuals who Nietzsche believed could lead the way, breaking free from those constraints of conventional thought and shaping a more, vibrant future.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not about rejecting morality altogether. It's about questioning those inherited values that might be holding us back and forging a new morality that's more aligned with, our individual natures and aspirations.
It's about becoming the authors of our own lives rather than, blindly following these scripts that are handed down to us by tradition or society.
Precisely. And this is where Nietzsche's ideas can be truly liberating. He's not, offering a rigid set of rules, but a framework for self-discovery and self-creation.
It's like he's saying, don't just accept the world as it is. Question it, challenge it, and dare to create something new and beautiful.
And that's a message that I think resonates deeply with many people even today.
It certainly does with me.
Yeah.
But Nietzsche had some interesting views on specific nations as well, right?
Yeah.
Didn't he draw a contrast between England and France?
He did. Nietzsche praised England for its focus on disinterested knowledge, but ultimately saw its future as heading towards a form of plebeianism.
So even a nation that was known for its intellectual and scientific pursuits wasn't immune to the dangers of mediocrity in Nietzsche's eyes. What about France?
He had an even less optimistic view of France, describing its future as incurably mediocre, which is quite a statement, considering, how much he admired French thinkers and artists. But remember, Nietzsche was all about challenging assumptions, even his own.
Right, it's like he was holding up a mirror to European society and saying, take a good look at yourselves. Are you heading in the direction you truly want to go?
Yeah, this brings us back to the heart of Beyond Good and Evil. It's a book meant to make us uncomfortable, to force us to confront our beliefs and assumptions about the world, about morality, even about ourselves.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting for you, the listener, right? Nietzsche compels us to ask ourselves what seemingly good ideas in our own society might actually be hindering our growth. What truths have we accepted without truly questioning them?
It's a challenge, isn't it, to step outside our comfort zones and confront those deeply ingrained beliefs that we often take for granted. It is. But maybe that's the point. Perhaps that discomfort is where real growth begins.
It's like that saying, no pain, no gain. Maybe a little intellectual discomfort is what we need to break free from those limiting beliefs and create something truly meaningful. Welcome back to the deep dive. As we wrap up our exploration of Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, I'm struck by how relevant his ideas still feel, even over a century later. It's like he was like peering into the future and offering this warning about the potential pitfalls of modern society.
He certainly had a knack for anticipating those challenges, didn't he?
Yeah.
We've been talking about his critique of slave morality and the herding animal mentality, but it's important to remember that Nietzsche wasn't just a critic. He was also deeply interested in envisioning a path forward, a way to transcend those limitations and create a more fulfilling future for humanity.
Right. And a big part of that vision involved embracing the will to power. Right.
Hmm.
But as we discussed earlier, this isn't about dominating others or seeking power in a traditional sense.
Exactly. Nietzsche saw the will to power as this fundamental drive within all of us. It's that force that pushes us to create, to overcome obstacles, to strive for excellence in all aspects of life. It's about becoming the best versions of ourselves, not about controlling or manipulating others.
So it's more about self-mastery and personal growth than about, external power or authority.
Precisely. It's that inner drive
Yeah.
that pushes us to expand our horizons, to
Yeah.
challenge ourselves, and to create something meaningful in the world.
Right. And this is where those figures of the free spirit and the immoralist come into play, right? They embody that spirit of self-creation and the willingness to question these conventional ways of thinking.
Absolutely. They're the ones who dare to break free from the herd, to challenge the status quo, and to create their own values and meaning in a world that often, pressures us to conform.
It's inspiring in a way, isn't it? This idea that we have the power to shape our own destinies, to break free from those limiting beliefs that hold us back.
That's the essence of Nietzsche's message. He's not offering a rigid set of rules or a prepackaged philosophy to follow. He's giving us the tools to deconstruct those inherited beliefs that might be limiting us and to create a new, more authentic way of being in the world.
Right. It's like he's saying, don't just accept the world as it is, take what's valuable, discard what's not, and create something new and beautiful.
And that creative impulse, that drive to shape our own lives and contribute to the world is something that resonates deeply with people across cultures and generations, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's safe to say that this deep dive into beyond good and evil has been quite a journey. Nietzsche's work is complex, challenging, and often unsettling, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
It is. It forces us to confront those uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us. It compels us to grapple with the big questions about meaning, morality, and the human condition.
And even if we don't agree with everything Nietzsche says, his ideas can help us to sharpen our own thinking and approach the world with a more critical and discerning eye.
Absolutely. So as we conclude our exploration, we encourage you to continue the conversation, challenge your own assumptions, embrace the power of questioning, and perhaps even discover a bit of that free spirit within yourself.
It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive as much as we have.
Until next time, keep diving deep and never stop questioning.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.